Welcome, everybody. Welcome to LogicPod, the podcast that brings you deep insights into the ever-evolving world of monitoring and observability. I'm Steve Velarde, joined by my co-hosts, Dennis Milholm and Kirk Simon. And you're tuning into LogicMonitor's monthly dive into technologies, trends, and transformations affecting the IT industry. Whether you're managing complex hybrid infrastructures or orchestrating cloud environments, this is your destination for expert perspectives and practical insights. Stay tuned. We have a really good show for you today. But before we introduce our guest for today's episode, I figured we'd do a quick round the room and tell you a little bit about us since this is our first episode. And I'll go ahead and get us kicked off. I'm Steve Velarde. I'm a senior sales engineer, actually technically principal sales engineer now at LogicMonitor, where I've been for the last 4.5 years. Prior to that, I worked for MSPs, consulting agencies, pretty much all up and down the IT industry. So happy to have you guys here with us today. And I will pass it on to Dennis to continue.
Thank you very much. My name is Dennis Milholm. I'm an SE here with the enterprise team at LogicMonitor. Been here for now 3 years, and I was actually a customer for 4+ years before I came over to this role as a sales engineer. So plenty of experience with the migration, the consolidation, and moving over to a fully observability, kind of setup. So really enjoying my time here with the team, and I will pass off to Kirk for his own introduction.
Awesome. Thanks, Dennis. My name's Kirk Simon. How's everyone doing? I'm also a sales engineer here at LogicMonitor, and been here for about 3 years. And prior to joining LogicMonitor, I was with another observability company for 5 years. And prior to that, I was on the operations side. So we're all very well, we're very accustomed to the challenges that our customers face because we've all been in the field and in the fire, and now we've all transitioned to helping folks get out of the fires that they face on a day-to-day basis using the LogicMonitor platform.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys, and thank you all for being here. So today, we actually are joined by a very dear friend and colleague, Patrick Rouse, who is an enterprise product manager on the LogicMonitor team. So thank you, Patrick, for being here. He's going to kind of give us a little bit into some of the unique insights on what goes on behind the scenes at LogicMonitor in terms of how products, I always like to think of I'm just a bill, right? How product features become reality, and share a little bit of his thoughts on observability. So before we kind of dig in, remember to follow us on your favorite podcast platform to stay updated with the latest episodes. But let's kick on things over and bring on Patrick. Hey, Patrick, what's going on?
I'm just thinking you dated yourself with "I'm just a bill."
So. It just popped into my head when I said that, and I was like, reminds me of a little bill sitting on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, I think that's how I passed civics class. So.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here and taking the time out of your evening to join us. For the folks that don't know who you are, what you do, if you want to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and we can kind of get things kicked off.
So I'm on the product team here at LogicMonitor. I won't share titles and stuff. You guys can look that stuff up on LinkedIn. But I've been at LogicMonitor for about 3 years now. And before I was at LogicMonitor, I spent 6 years at NTT Data. And then before that, I spent about 10 years at Dell. And then before that, I worked for myself, which was the best job in the world, next to LogicMonitor, of course. But so my team looks after the stuff that you can monitor with LogicMonitor. So any physical or virtual equipment, as well as the collector and the API.
That's nice. So for the folks on the call, that's like all the logic modules are the things that we actually build to collect all of the fun data and metrics, which we'll kind of get into actually in a little bit. But Kirk, why don't you go ahead and get us kicked off, and we'll got a couple questions that I prepared for us, but we'll kind of keep it pretty informal.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I think, Patrick, you kind of kicked it off a little bit. I guess for the viewers and for the folks on on the show today, could you give us a quick elevator pitch of what your team does at LogicMonitor?
Sure. So so my team is basically product people. So we have Craig, who looks after the collector, That would be anything related to performance, scalability, reliability, usability of the collector, whether it's Windows or Linux. The thing that we use to collect data, whether they're logs or metrics from the platforms that customers use us to monitor. And then there's Jake, who looks after the LogicMonitor API. And then I look after the modules, and then kind of the broader looking across how we I guess interact with the rest of the platform, as well as the probably the bigger part of my role, which is looking after our technology partnerships with vendors like Cisco and HP Aruba and Palo Alto and all the other networking vendors that are out there. So that list is pretty long. But yeah, so that's what my team does.
Awesome. And you mentioned you mentioned a few things there. So for those not familiar with logic modules, can you explain what they are and
Sure.
why they're important?
Super. Yeah. So you could think of so there are multiple different types of logic modules. The most common one people would refer to as a data source. Data source is basically a set of instructions that the collector uses to fetch data from something. So as an example, if I want to get...
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
That was the most simple and beautiful explanation of what a data source is in our product,
good.
man. That was awesome.
He's practiced it.
That one.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I know I made that up on the spot. We that actually came out of we just did a 2 weeks of events called LM Training Live, where we did training in person in 4 different cities, and I think I probably just got good at trying to answering distill things down to the brass tacks of, hey, if you can't explain it to a 6th grader, then you probably don't understand it. So, yeah. So data source is the most common one. Not that it's the only one. Other ones might be log sources, like to fetch log information, but perhaps the most important one is maybe the property source. Basically determines what you monitor, and maybe to fetch information like metadata about devices and apply that so you can organize things better. But those kind of control what you monitor. So hopefully that's helpful. Steve knows this stuff way better than I do, because he I see the wizardry that he puts in there. But yeah, I need to understand why they do what they do, but I don't spend a lot of time building modules. I spend a lot of time testing them and saying, oh yeah, that didn't do what I expected. We need to change it different.
Yeah, but to that point, right? Logic modules in essence are really the core heart of the platform, right? I mean, without logic modules, we essentially don't have any way to collect and extract data. So it's a super important part of the product and how we actually achieve observability. So I think that's why I'm more closely aligned with you than any other product manager on the team, because that's where a lot of our value proposition comes from. So
100%.
Well, so I used to be a sales engineer, so I think that's probably also why we get along, because I've been in your shoes. So and I was the sales engineer that was always poking the product people at Quest Software and at Dell, saying, hey, if the product just did this, people would buy more of it, or it'd be easier to use.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of goes into a little bit. We have a little bit of a question later on around kind of what that process looks like. We'll go a little more into some details there. I guess for a long time LogicMonitor customers, obviously Logic modules have changed over the years. We got log sources now. We have all sorts of other types of things being improved upon. From your opinion, have there been any key improvements in what logic modules can do over the past year that kind of changed the way we approach monitoring? With some of the cloud networking stuff, there's been kind of some fundamental design changes that we've gone through.
Yeah, great question. And I don't want to sound like a LogicMonitor fanboy, but perhaps the most...
There's 4 people wearing LogicMonitor t-shirts right now.
I know. I try to think more about the problem we're trying to solve for people, rather than hey, because the things that I'm going to talk about are, you could use other products to do it, but I like the way that we do it better. But perhaps the making the integration of logs tight with the rest of the platform, and and basically what I mean is that, if you've got an issue that's going on, I'll just use the network as an example. You have a switch port that keeps going up or down, or something, or a switch keeps getting disassociated from a stack. Knowing why that happens, that information is in the logs. So like having the textual semantic information tightly correlated with the metrics, I think is probably the most profound change that we've brought into the platform in the past few years. And I'm going to leave like the AI, because the easy answer would be, oh yeah, AI is just everything and making everything better. Yes, we're doing all the AI stuff too, but having logs and metrics highly correlated so that you, I guess, actually troubleshoot and find the root cause. That would be my Patrick's opinion. So I don't think you can troubleshoot a network without accident.
True.
And if you can, then you're way better than I am.
No, I completely agree with that. Logs, at least from when I was on the customer space, was just, it changed the entire game to be able to bring in the server, the network, the storage logs in a single view. And yeah, it completely changed how we did triage as well. And kind of dealing with that same kind of question, and maybe AI, like you said, is always the obvious go-to. But I know when I started working here, one of the first things I started getting into was Mist, and I know you were very big on the Juniper Mist side, and it was kind of, there's been that big shift over the years going from SNMP over to API, getting rid of the more, traditional older way of monitoring things, whether it be traps or SNMP based stuff, to API, which is a pretty big shift. But on that concept, what would you say is one of the biggest shifts you've seen in the monitoring landscape, whether it's to observability, whether it's the method at which we pull the data, or things going to the cloud? What would you say would be the biggest shift you've seen in your time working on it?
So I think a few things. Perhaps the biggest shift I've seen is the stuff that IT operators are required to monitor. And I'll just provide like an example. Like Cisco Prime Infrastructure was just the NMS that people, or the network management system that people used for a decade plus. And now that thing is end of life, and people are adopting things like Cisco Catalyst Center, formerly known as DNA Center, or Cisco Meraki, or Aruba Central, or Juniper Mist, or any of these other cloud network management platforms. It's a paradigm shift, because we get where, it used to just be, hey, I'm just need to know some SNMP OIDs, or maybe get some traps, and I can get all of my data. And you can, for the most part, you can still do that with a lot of these, except maybe for Juniper Mist, which is devoid of SNMP functionality. But most people hear API and they think it's innately better. However, I have I kind of adopted that point of view for a while, but my point of view is changing, and I'm
Right.
happy to say that I'm open to have my mind changed.
And that's a big deal, right? Because I know one of the things you and I had worked on was, great, you can pull in, you can discover, you can get all these amazing metrics and properties and tags based on API. But when you're going to start looking at every minute polling interface statistics and pulling that over an API, good luck, right? You're going to fall back to the more traditional methods to pull that. And I remember we worked together on a customer to kind of explain that whole process for them to get it. And I think you even provided a Cisco article showing, no, look, they even say don't do that.
That one. I think that was probably with what is now called Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I've even I've been like in deep, playing with Aruba Central, or HP Aruba Networking Central, as it is now called, and playing with the different APIs, whether it's the REST API or the streaming API or SNMP and logs. And I'm here to tell you, SNMP and logs just beats the pants off of everything else, just because it's real time. I mean, I can pull the device for SNMP information every minute. Syslogs are literally, the message gets sent and I see it in LogicMonitor within 30 seconds. So you can't get that from the APIs. So.
Which is funny, because I remember when streaming telemetry was announced as the next big thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, SNMP is dead." not going to be
Yeah,
around
well,
anymore. And I
mainframes are
haven't
dead.
seen anybody do it to the point where it's a compatible replacement.
Yeah, mainframes are dead too, right? So
All that.
Oh, yeah.
they probably still hold all of the information about all of our houses.
Those Cobalt developers don't have
No, I
jobs.
mean, don't get me
Right.
wrong. Streaming telemetry is really cool, and I look forward to the day where you can just subscribe to the telemetry that you want. Everything just works. But
Yeah.
I think we're kidding ourselves if we're not saying that that is not the forefront of technology and the forefront of technology, or the frontier of technology. Just because you can do it at a location or in a lab or at some small scale or with some percentage of your infrastructure doesn't mean that you can magically turn it on everywhere. An example I give is like, if you have a LogicMonitor collector that is to monitor, 500 devices, and I'm pulling data every minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. What does the scalability of that collector look like if I'm now streaming telemetry from all of those devices? You might cut your scalability by orders of magnitude. Just because you can
I mean,
doesn't
should.
necessarily. Yeah. So I'm always hunting for when I get the questions of, hey, do you support model-driven telemetry or streaming telemetry or whatever words come out of the customer's mouth? Tell me more about what it is you want to do and why. I'm really looking for the problems that customers are trying to solve. And I don't get me wrong. I mean, I love propeller heading out about all the technology, just like the rest of them. But we need to make sure we're doing it for a really good reason.
I think that's a good point you bring up, Patrick, because the next thread of thought that was coming to mind was, as we're kind of looking for the problems that customers are trying to solve, like, can you kind of walk us through how customer feedback translates into like the decisions that your team makes on what to build, why, things
Oh
like
yeah.
that?
Absolutely. So we get feedback from a lot of different channels. Direct feedback from the customer is the best. Like just like this in person, face to face. We did that at LM Training Live, where we got, we basically stood up in front of customers that really know the product and just said, hey, let us have it. Tell us, good, bad, and different. So that sort of feedback is great. Having people tell you what they like, what they don't like. In product feedback, where people say, hey, I'd like the product to do X, or your product sucks, and this is why. That sort of feedback. That sort of feedback is good too. The feedback that you guys bring directly from customer interactions is great. So in general, any sort of deep textualized feedback, like people doing show and tell, is the best. Hey, this is what I'm trying to do and I can't, or this is what I'm trying to do and it takes me, 40 minutes. And I don't have 40 minutes. I have 4 minutes. So like that sort of feedback is really, really helpful. But
Yeah.
my favorite is, why doesn't your product monitor this thing that I have? I'm like, well, it can, but there aren't 1,000 other customers that have that thing that you have. So
Right.
so
That I guess that tees up my next question, which I was curious on, right? Because obviously you have a bunch of SEs telling you, I need this for a deal, build this thing. We have customers telling you, I have obscure technology X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Why isn't supported? And then obviously you have feedback board and community posts and all these other sources of feedback. How is it that you guys balance between what do we build versus customers are asking for versus we have a long-term vision that we're trying to achieve and we have to kind of prioritize how we go about putting things on the roadmap? I think a lot of people just assume, feedback goes into a black hole and it doesn't go anywhere. But in reality, right, there's a lot of different things. And I was privy to kind of see almost how the sausage is made in terms of our roadmap for this year. And it was a very interesting process. So I'm curious for you personally, I guess, how do you go about trying to figure out what we should be focusing on versus, what might not make it into the, feature functionality roadmap?
Great questions. Let's have a think about that for a second. I guess maybe the important thing is understanding what a roadmap is for. As some people think a roadmap is just a list of stuff that we're gonna build, but a roadmap. And if you think about what the word actually means, it's a path to get you somewhere. And the get you somewhere is in the vision statement that you mentioned. Like, so LogicMonitor wants to be the best observability platform that there is. So how do we go about doing that? So we think about things that we want to enable customers to do with our platform, using our platform, like making troubleshooting, or making it so that you can monitor more things with a platform across cloud, on premise, those sorts of things. So we usually build thematic roadmaps, like, hey, we want to increase the scalability of a certain part of the platform by X%, or we want to, like, if I look back over the last year, for me, it was, hey, I want to have 100% coverage of the market leading SD-WAN solutions. That was my goal over the last year, which once we checked off all of those, I'm like, okay, cool. We can go out and you guys can go stand up in front of any customer that's buying any of the like 8 market leading SD-WAN vendors, and know that you've got something that works. So it's those sorts of things, saying, hey, we want to provide broad coverage for this area, because we know that that's where CIOs are spending their money. CIOs laying down, he or she's laying down, millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars on new technology. So that's those are kind of like the bets that the product teams make. That, hey, if we build it, they will come, sort of things. We're doing the same thing with wireless networking. Make sure that we have broad coverage for enterprise wireless networks, because as customers are going from Wi-Fi 5 to 6 to 6E to 7, those customers are spending millions and millions of dollars on this technology, and being able to monitor it, able to have a platform that will deliver profound ROI is really important. So then there's all the other like noise that happens, like, hey, I need to be able to monitor this new version of something, or those things always happen. And like the plans of, hey, we want to provide broad coverage for this and broad coverage for that, and be better than all that stuff is great. But I'll take like the Mike Tyson point of view. Everybody's got a plan, and then they get punched in the mouth. Those are the kind of things that you have to deal with. You see something that maybe isn't scaling the way that you thought it would, or that the ideas that you had about the customer problem are actually something slightly adjacent to that. Being able to accept reality and pivot a little bit. But yeah, in general, we have an idea of at least a year out of where we want to go and why. But maybe in our customer facing roadmap, we're really showing like the current quarter and really broad strokes of where we're going. So hopefully that helps.
It does.
It does. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, and what you guys had done on the product side with all the different providers, whether it's the Catalyst Center, whether it's Mist, they all came out relatively quick, one after the other. So it was a constant, conversation we're always having, giving our demos and everything in discovery, saying, oh yeah, we do that now, thanks to your team and everything you've been doing. But as far as what we've done and all the different technologies you brought in, the observability play, the hybrid conversation, what would you say our competitors out there are having the more difficult time reproducing or replicating? Like what we do that's so unique that they're just like, we'll just stick to APM, or we'll stick to whatever we do better.
That's a great question. I mean, if you look at, I think maybe the more legacy on-prem solutions, where the monitoring was typically SNMP based, maybe just understanding that customers are expecting to be able to use more than SNMP, and building stuff with APIs is not cheap. I mean, we have team of developers, that's all they do is build stuff based on the different APIs from Cisco and HP and Palo Alto and Juniper and all these different vendors. It's a lot harder to do that than to just point stuff at a SNMP OID and just let the data flow in. So because once we release something like that, we're on the hook to update our anytime there's an API update, and that could be every quarter, it could be every year.
Companies don't make breaking changes to their API at a whim.
But on the flip side, the same things happen with SNMP. Like I've got a brand new Wi-Fi 7 AP735 from HP Aruba, And when I was talking with them, they're like, "Oh yeah, it should work. It should support all the other stuff." First thing I tested, there was 2 bugs that I found. I'm like, okay, but
Oh,
awesome. Hey, we have a technology partnership with HP. I contact them. They open a support case. Well, it's so that part's good. That's probably the most important thing about Logic Monitors. That we have the partnerships with the big vendors, so that if we have an issue, we just let them know, and then they go and fix it on their side. So that's the second time in the past year that we've had an issue with something from HP, and we open up a case with them, and literally they call us back in a couple of hours and talk through the issue, and then they open up a case on their side. And yeah, so those sorts of partnerships with the technology vendor are crucial, because if you don't have those, then you're basically, hey, I built something in my garage and hope that it works. Kind of. That's not what people are paying us for. Because there are other solutions you can get that are that kind, where it's cheap or free, but then you get what you pay for.
no, that is definitely true. And kind of piggybacking off of that, and you might have even kind of already answered this one a little bit, but with the emergence of all the cloud-based, networking monitoring solutions out there, uh, how much did that influence our decision, or Logic Monitor's decision, to just move over towards that instead of more the traditional? I mean, everybody seems to be moving to the cloud-based solutions. Looking at what Meraki had done, Miss, but Catalyst Center, is that just taken over and our shift has just moved completely that way, or is there still some interest more in the on-prem as well for the network side of the house, as an example?
Well, I mean, if we think about it, the devices are still all on premise,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of like let's say a firewall appliance, or like
Sure.
stuff that you can load in AWS and things like that. But for the most part, we're talking about devices that are on premise, like
Mm-hmm.
SD branch type devices, or software defined branch type devices. So firewall, switch, access point, camera, IoT sensor, those sorts of things. Um, I I don't want to like bullshit you guys, but at the end of the day, I follow the money. I look at where
Sure.
CIOs are spending their money. I said, hey, I noticed that the compound annual growth rate for this technology segment is 3 times what these other ones are. Let's go find out why. So that's the sort of research that like I did a few years ago, just to find out, hey, why are CIOs spending their money in this area more than other places, and then go and talk to a bunch of customers, find out the struggles that they have with with their incumbent monitoring tools, and then we went and built things to make their lives easier. So yeah, it wasn't just because it was cool. Because if I only built stuff to monitor stuff that was cool, I probably would be out of a job.
But you'd be fulfilled and happy.
Yeah, and we'd be living in a nice little cardboard box.
With the best Wi-Fi in the area.
But it's
Wi-Fi
it's
7.
interesting you mentioned that, though.
That's right.
Yeah, with the best Wi-Fi in the area. But that maybe something else that's going on in the industry is that, like, because like the cloud managed networking, when we talk about Meraki and those sort of things, starting to now see that on the infrastructure side as well, like Cisco Intersight, UCSX series. I think there's going to be more and more of that. Nutanix has got the same thing with Nutanix Prism Central, where now they have the cloud platforms that are managing on-prem infrastructure that's not network. So that's maybe not brand new, but not as common as it is in networking. Where networking, every single vendor has got a cloud managed networking platform, except maybe Ubiquity.
They have site manager APIs, but they're very, very basic. And
yeah,
that spawns a side question on that topic, right? So obviously, with the cloud-based networking stuff that we support today with Meraki and Catalyst Center and Juniper and all that fun stuff, that kind of spawned internally, at least, right? Kind of a new onboarding procedure within how we kind of deliver time to value for customers, right? When we talk about, spinning up LogicMonitor and how quickly we can get visibility into things, the net scans play an important role in not just onboarding that stuff, but trying to expedite the process of making sure all the properties and metadata and all the stuff that you're going to care about are taken care of. Do you think that going into next year in the future, we're if we start to see that shift from server-based infrastructure going to more of a cloud-based architecture where Prism and all these other things are happening, do you foresee LogicMonitor trying to build additional types of onboarding processes to adapt to that style of monitoring so we can quickly handle lifecycle management and other things for customers?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, because we look at, if you look at the life cycle of stuff, hey, it's discovery is the first thing. How do I discover what I monitor? And coming out of a service provider business, customers would say, hey, this is my Excel spreadsheet of the stuff that I've got, and then we would go turn on our discovery tool and find all the stuff that they forgot about. Or they I'm sure you guys see all the time. I mean, I did a net scan at my house, and it's picking up my Xbox and all kinds of other stuff that's out there. My IoT sensors in my fridge. Yeah, I'm trying to think back to your original question.
Yeah, it was just more or less.
Yeah. We're gonna adapt the onboarding process. So it's yes, I think from my perspective, the areas that I want to evolve it, I want to get rid of the word nets. That might be the first thing.
Yes, it needs to be
There we go.
a more ingrained experience. Yes.
Yeah, I saw Steve casting out there and just kind of.
Well, I mean, the function we have inside of LogicMonitor is called a netscape, regardless of what it's actually doing. Whether it's actually scanning your network or feeding in a CSV file or running a script, or the enhanced script netscan, probably the worst name for a product feature in the history. But it's really powerful. Yeah. So I'd like to maybe just put a pretty front end on that and just make it simpler. But it's real. I mean, we've onboarded hundreds of thousands of devices that way. So it's worked, but it's not without some trade-offs. So yeah, I definitely see the opportunities to make that more user-friendly.
Well, I welcome those changes.
Yeah, the other area that we're working on right now is providing let's say more broad support for zero-touch provision devices. So devices that we assume to have a dynamic IP address. So as an example, if I go out and I buy new access points for 10 new offices, and I order them through CDW or SoftChoice or somewhere else, wherever I'm ordering them from, and then I just say, hey, these are the shipping addresses for these different locations, and then I get an email from the vendor that says, hey, here are the serial numbers. So I go and I put those into Meraki or into Aruba Central, and then I apply the policies that I want, to be able to just turn those on and be able to monitor them with the default settings that are usually, hey, just use a dynamically assigned IP address from a DHCP server. Right now, most monitoring products assume fully qualified domain name or a static IP address, and we are one of those monitoring products. So we're actively working on a way right now for, and it's probably going to be multiple different ways to deal with this, but to not assume those things, to not assume that the IP address that we have is the unique identifier for the device. So that's something that in the next, I really hope that in the next 6 months is no longer an issue at all.
I like how that sounds.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it sucks when you do discovery and you find out that, hey, this device is in LogicMonitor 4 times. Why?
That's 4 devices.
I didn't say it. You did.
Yeah. So a little shifting gears on that to more like just 2 parts to it. One is completely unrelated and kind of a little bit of a sidestep. I absolutely love how I know anybody in the SE org can reach out to anybody in the product org and be able to ask any question pretty much anytime. Everybody I've dealt with has been very responsive. And from what I talk to other people, that's not necessarily what you find in a lot of different places, right? So working with your team and everybody there has been fantastic. sidestepping over to the question here is what feature do you have in the pipeline today, or maybe even more of a wish list? Do you wish you could fast track if you just had unlimited time and resources? What's that one thing I just want this now that you could just make happen, snap your fingers?
Or even better, if you don't have one that's fast track, which one would you put on the roadmap if you
Yes.
had approvals to just green light anything?
Well, so there's the stuff that I want, like if I could like magic wand, just
Mhm.
magically make it happen, it would to make probably open telemetry be like completely pervasive across the product, which is something that's going to take years, not months. But
Yes.
and the reason why it's not possible right now is that well, one, there's architectural differences between the way that we store data and the way open telemetry is architected, but also
Mhm.
there's no vendor today there's no infrastructure vendor today that natively emits open telemetry protocol. So that's kind of like at the frontier of things. And I think when that starts happening, when devices start natively emitting open telemetry protocol rather than, because like open telemetry today, like if I wanted to use an open telemetry collector to get information about a switch or a server, it basically would be scraping that device with SNMP or an API and then turning around and transforming it into open telemetry protocol and sending that to the observability backend, which would be us or Splunk or somebody else. So yeah, so like if I could snap my fingers, I would like have all of the infrastructure vendors just magically emit open telemetry protocol or OTLP. But that's not going to happen. But so I think that's probably more in the 3 to 5 year range unless everybody starts picking subs. I think the thing that's probably going to come, well, that's going to come a lot sooner than that will be LogicMonitor ingesting webhooks, which is about time. So and the use case for that is if I have let's just take a real world example. And we'll just distill this down to the kind of very simple type of language that I used earlier. So if somebody walks up to your front door, you get a notification from Ring or from whoever to say, hey, there's the pizza delivery guys at your front door, or DoorDash is at your door. You don't walk to your front door every minute or every 5 minutes to check to see if DoorDash is there. So
I mean, sometimes I do if I'm really hungry, but most of the time,
I think my wife does that with Amazon, as as many packages as we get. But yeah, no, webhook is just the way that cloud platforms communicate. So I can send a message to a callback URL, which is basically just a HTTPS receiver that accepts the event notification, and then I get a somewhat real-time message. Real-time in that we would get the message in real time, but doesn't mean that it's like the instant that it would be the real time from the time that the other platform sends. So we're great at sending webhooks. We send webhooks to all kinds of different platforms, whether it's ServiceNow or any of the different systems that we with, but we suck at receiving them. So yeah, so I want to make it so that if somebody walks in front of a Cisco Meraki camera, that you can get notified, hey, that somebody walked in front of the camera at the data center. Not supposed to be anybody. Or
cool.
Or we have other people say, hey, if somebody presses the alarm button in a school, not only does that message need to go to the police, but the IT team needs to know that, hey, they need to shut down procedure stuff. So that's sort of stuff where you need real time information. And I think there are also use cases for getting other event type information. But yeah, it's usually event type information, like the text of something that happened with the actual event ID would end up going in. But yeah, that's the thing that I really wanted to do this year, and we just didn't get around to do it. That'll be something that I'll be really happy when it's here, because then we don't have to fight as much with getting rate limited by vendors.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, that I can think of a million other scenarios, whether it's poor man's APM, right, where you have exceptions, kick off a webhook to tell you what happened. I mean, there's countless alert tools that we want to integrate with that could just send us a webhook alert, and we could incorporate that into our correlation. So yeah, that would be awesome to see come to the platform.
I mean, it does make it so that you can monitor pretty much anything that is cloud managed. Should be
Yep.
able to send.
Awesome, cool. So
Very
like, I want to stay on this thread of like, like thinking about the future a little bit. I guess like, how do you see the landscape, like the landscape of observability panning out in the next, 3 to 5, as we talk about the roadmap and for the company and what we're trying to do?
I mean,
How do you see the
after we
overall-
take over the world?
World domination first.
Yeah, world domination first. Yeah, so we're gonna kick everybody's ass. So that's number one. Yeah, no, I mean, no. All kidding aside, I mean, there are a lot. The observability industry has got a lot of great vendors in. We're one of the few that are not publicly traded. Think of who our rivals are. We have, almost all of our rivals have been scooped up by a publicly traded company. So that puts us in rarefied air where and truly be heterogeneous, that we can afford any vendor without any ties to the company that owns us, which is good. But it doesn't mean that it'll always be that way. Things happen. So consolidation of tools certainly is going to happen. I think that just based on the, if I'm reading the tea leaves, open telemetry will change things. I think that is just seeing like the companies that that participate in the open telemetry CNCF project or the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. Okay, sorry, it took me a second. My brain.
CNCF. That's all I know.
There's so many times I think CNCF again. Yeah. So I mean, that's like the most contributed to CNCF project that there is today, even more than Kubernetes. So which says a lot. I mean, I think that the two biggest vendors that are contributing to that right now are Microsoft and Cisco. So that's that's a lot of investment that's going into that, and I think it's inevitable that becomes the de facto standard for telemetry. I think that
you see that as the next generation of SNMP in a sense.
I see it as the next generation of like to replace REST API.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it could be decades before anything. Because I mean, they go through the life cycles. We got.
Oh
SNMP,
yeah. When I say next, I mean like 10, 20 years out.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still doing traps, right? So,
yeah,
stuff lingers.
But we have sexy traps now. So.
Oh, don't remind me.
We're bringing sexy trap. Is that going to be our next slogan?
It didn't hit as well as I thought it was gonna.
No.
No. Yeah. No.
Inside joke for all you.
I think. Yeah. I mean, I'll have to think about it, and maybe I'll come back on another episode. But I mean, right now, I think that open telemetry is a thing that over time will change the way that people do. It's already starting. People talk about it a lot. But it gets down to what can I do at scale everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Good question. I know the answer, but just wanted to put it out there. Is LogicMonitor contributing to the OTel project at all?
Yeah, but for APM or for application monitoring.
Yep.
But in 2025, we're going to have to start contributing to the let's just say host and system metrics sort of things as we start building out things for doing network server monitoring, those sorts of things. So I'm not. We probably won't ship anything in 2025 for doing anything with like a open telemetry collector for monitoring your servers and network stuff. But we'll be doing the maybe foundational stuff that needs to happen before we get down that path. Go ahead.
No, go finish your thought.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is because we don't want to just deliver something that's cute and good enough for one vendor. People buy LogicMonitor for a reason, so I can monitor everything that I've got. So I think we'll need to do some of the foundational plumbing so that we can get there at the time that the value can be delivered, rather than it just being a skunkworks project.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, one of the things I've seen come up, I don't know about you guys, more and more is eBPF. I don't know if you think that has any
Yes. And that's the enhanced
implications in the
birthday
future.
packet filter. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's it comes up a lot around application performance monitoring, and
the
that
red,
it's
the
a
red metrics, right? Is that
yeah,
generally?
yeah, 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 and it's how can I get stuff that's really valuable to IT ops without having to change my application to get the information. So without having to actually embed code into my application, without having to crack open my app, how can I get meaningful observability? So eBPF is a way to do that. So you should be looking for those sorts of things to come in Logic Monitor in 2025.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now I know there's one question here, it might even be our last before we call it a podcast. The one question that everybody's always asking, where what will AI do in our landscape, in observability and everything like that, from generative AI to whatever it's going to be? Do you see this everything shifting towards the world? And obviously, it's the buzzword now. I mean, I'm pretty sure my toaster has AI. I'm not sure how it works, but I'm pretty sure it's advertised as in the new AI toaster. But where do you think it's going to fit in our landscape?
Um, well, I mean, right now, I mean, just seeing what we're doing with Edwin right now, I mean, being able to pull together information from lots of different sources and be able to correlate that and to be able to, just take a mountain of noise and say, all right, from these thousands and thousands of events, this is the actual root cause. I mean, the quicker or the easier we can make it to identify issues, um, the better. I mean, it saves time and allows IT to focus on the stuff that actually makes the business money rather than just fixing things that breaks. I think the thing that I'm looking forward to with AI is more the proactive stuff. AI being able to tell us about things. Hey, these things are going on that you didn't ask about, and that potentially gets into the Skynet sort of
Hmm.
worry. But I think that is where where it will be revolutionary, where observability systems can say, hey, we noticed that, um, and you're not doing anything about it, rather than you having to tell it to look for things. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
That'd be enormous. Not just helping you correlate, but putting in plain English
yeah,
what
yeah, making
happened.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, from I mean, what we're dealing with right now is, hey, just taking information from lots of different systems and shoving it through Edwin and having Edwin figure out, what the problem is. So,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
awesome. I mean, being able to do that and have it deliver value same day, which is not many places can say that. Hey, I turned it on in the same day. I got my ROI on day one. That's pretty awesome.
I think logs will also play a key part in that too, right? As we can either feed that stuff in as sources of other data for Edwin, or if we can just add some AI on top of the processing we already do. I mean, I think you mentioned it before, right? It's kind of the crux of why something is broken, right? You generally go to the logs for the why. LogicMonitor tells you the what, and that's kind of how you piece those things together. So
Well, so I may go back and change my answer to something you guys asked about earlier. Like the thing that I could have, like if I could have the one thing and have it now, we ingest logs for all the different environments, and everybody's syslog messages or API based event messages are all in different formats, and they'll use some squirrely naming from having an AI that would you know maybe standardize all of that into human readable language and tell
Yes.
me, hey, Sally can't get on the network because of X. I mean, I know each of the vendors, HP's got one, Juniper Mist has got one, Cisco Meraki's got one. I'm sure Ruckus has another one. I'm sure Ubiquiti has another one, but they all use different language, different terms for things, even though they're all based on the 802.11 standards. head scratcher there for a second, but
Mhm. Mhm.
but yeah, that would be my thing, because at the end of the day, the service desk can't know how to decipher all that stuff. So I think we're at the early stages of that, but that's where my mind is like, how can I make it easy to decipher the data that's in the logs and turn it into actually valuable information.
AI-driven log sources. Look out. That's what's next.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I heard it here, folks.
well,
You heard it. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that.
no problem. Yeah, no, I want LogicMonitor to be able to tell you that Sally's experience is getting better or worse, or that the
Mhm.
accounting team's experience is better than it was a month ago. So that the CIO can justify the expenses that or the investments that she's made in technology.
Now that you mention it, I remember seeing your mock-up that you showed me a while back, and that was a pretty cool one. So
That's my take over the world.
that was a good one. We'll have to save that for the next time you're back.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. Any parting questions, Kirk? Anything that comes to mind?
No, I think that wraps us up. And that's the first episode of LogicPod. And
Number
I'd like to
one.
give another huge thanks to Patrick Rouse for sharing your insights and expertise. We use you every day, and I'm hoping that we've opened the door a bit more for customers and soon to be customers to get familiar with your face.
Yeah, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter or X.
Yep, and that will be in
all
the
your
show
feature
notes.
requests go right to Patrick's LinkedIn messages.
For
Awesome.
a good observability time. Yeah.
There you go.
Or observably good time.
There. That's the new LogicMonitor t-shirt slogan.
That's it right there. I like it.
Awesome. For our listeners who want to learn more about LogicMonitor's observability platform and how it can transform your monitoring strategy, visit logicmonitor.com. There you'll find the resources, case studies, and more information about features and some of the roadmap. Don't forget to subscribe to the LogicPod podcast. Join our community of observability professionals. Ask us questions. If you enjoyed today's episode, we hope you join us again next month as we discuss AI and its implications in the realm of observability. Until then, keep monitoring, and thanks for joining and listening to LogicPod.
Awesome. See you next time.